Hey guys, continuation on the Mission Impossible project. This time, the valve looks quite a bit different. And our blue on the valve is completely different. Take a look. That valve has just a tiny light coating on any of that valve. Now you have to realize I may not have squirt the exact same amount of Dicam every time, but I tried it. I tried to. And our bowl looks pretty good. Still relatively wide. Not a lot happening on the chamber though. Okay, so where is it going? Well, before this we modified this edge here, right? Which gives us more flow with this over here. What I did forget to show you guys was what's going on with the Dicam on the cylinder bore, right? That was interesting. You could definitely see you're getting some fuel across this edge here. Sorry, guys. We're getting some fuel across here now. We actually got that on the last cut. Now with the back cut, it changed it even more. Okay? Let's just take a look at the bowl. And just a shadow on that side, right? But let's take a look at the bore adapter here. I have to add light. I can't see enough on this. Hold on. Okay. We've got splatter all the way over to here. You can see our angle, our swirl. But take a look at how much we have all the way on this side. That is extremely wide as far as our blue is going, right? So as far as what I was testing, it's still a 1.78. It has a back cut on it now. And if you notice, right, let's see if we can focus this, guys. .30 is almost the angle of this tulip. Now, hold on one sec. All right, let's see if we can focus this. Now, my friend from Finland asked a question, and I think this is what he was looking for. He wanted to see how tall that tulip is. It's 469 thousandths. Okay, and if you take a look at the port, it's quite a bit deeper than a small block Chevy port. Let's measure that. All right, a measurement from our 041X heads from this deck straight down to this part of the bowl versus the same thing on the 302 Dodge. The Dodge is 44 thousandths deeper. So the air has a chance to turn, right, come through, turn, and hit the back of the valve from the top. A lot more air is coming straight down on this valve. That's why a tulip works as well as it does. It's also one of the reasons that you can make pretty darn good power with this relatively small valve. Okay, this is what you guys saw last time. Intake, swirl, exhaust. Now, what I changed was I did a little work to the straight wall. I did some work to the valve job. It does have a tiny 60 cut into the bowl. The valve job is actually very, very wide on our valve, but it's, how can I say it? It's a shallow valve job, meaning when I cut that valve job, I didn't take a lot of metal off of it, so chances are it's getting an oversized valve anyway, So this is just for testing at this point, so I'm not really sweating it. I think I am going to change the top cut. If you take a look, right, what I used was a rounded stone to get this curve. And the experiment I want to do is I want to try a little bit steeper top cut, because I'm sure this was a 30. I'm going to try to make it a 35, and I'm going to leave it as a sharp edge here. Those tend to have better flow, a better flow curve than rounded. So I'm probably going to do one test just doing that, and I'll show you guys. So this is, I did a little work to the straight wall. I did a little work to the valve job, and it's got, it's 1.78 BC. It's got a back cut. Over here, NBC, no back cut. So it's very interesting what that little bit of work did with the back cut, right? As far as our raw flows, we got a minus, plus, 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 minus. Where before we were 221, we backed down to 212.6. Now, is that unusual between a back cut valve and a non-back cut valve? Absolutely not. Most of the testing that I've done, and I've said this before, if I'm going to do a very high RPM engine, chances are it will not have a back cut, depending upon how the flow curve is. It's always nice to have an extra valve. You can test it with a back cut, without the back cut, and you can compare the curves. But even though we lost a little bit at the very top, we gained in the entire mid-range. I'm going to take that as a win for that. Now let's take a look at our swirl, because our swirl has changed a bit. All right, we went up, down, up, down, up, up. Whereas we were 1455, which is a tad lower than I'd like. It went up to 2,000 and change. Now, you know, I didn't mention something earlier on about these heads. I mean, they're called the swirl head, right? Well, how exactly do you get swirl? Sorry about bouncing around, guys. How do you get swirl out of a chamber like this where the airflow is really coming at the back of the valve? Right? What they do is they shroud this part of the valve. That part of this stock chamber is vertical, probably for the first 200 thousandths of lift. Okay, and then it can start coming out this side, but it's still going to, the lion's share of the air is going to come out this way. So when they have most of the air coming out on this side, we get our circular pattern like so, right? Well, Charlie opened this up to get more raw airflow through. Since some of the air is coming out on this side and a lot of the air is coming out this way, those two storm fronts collide, and what it does is it slows down our rotation. Now, is that necessarily bad? It is not necessarily bad. And you see, on a good running engine, you'll be able to actually see it. It'll make almost like a heart-shaped pattern on the piston in the chamber. The question is, how much do you want? Well, for a project like this, where it's going to be absolutely choked to death with the stock intake manifold and the stock carburetor, I've been looking around local to get to find, you know, a 318 two-barrel manifold and take a look at it, but I haven't had any luck. I'm sure that intake needs a ton of work to even come close to 318 horsepower in this project. So it's imperative I get the heads the best I can. That way we can get a better signal to the intake manifold, which is going to give us more depression across the tiny venturis of that little tiny carburetor. Okay, let's take a look at what I did on the exhaust. The exhaust got a valve job. Now, I didn't go crazy with the valve job because my 3/8 hone for my hone oil is missing a piece. I don't know where it is. I have to look for that piece. So I wasn't able to hone it out, so it was a little tight, so the valve job came out a touch crooked. Not a big deal. It's a 1.5. I don't expect it to stay at 1.5, but it's not a perfect representation of what I'm trying to do. But take a look at what we wound up doing, all right? I put a little bit of a valve job on it. I put a 60 cut into the bowl, which I radiused out. Didn't touch the valve otherwise. It's still covered in ash, basically. So what do we do as far as flows? Minus, plus, 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 plus. As usual, my radius works really well. I mean, it's got a nice pop up. I think our exhaust is probably fine. Will I do more to it? It depends on our airflows. Now, let's take a look at our airflows for the exhaust, right? 249 to 220 went down. 279, 270, very similar. 236, 211. Moving more air, but two of my speeds went down. Okay, we got 298, 284, 281, 283, almost identical. 230, 207. So I have an exhaust port that's moving more air with relatively slower speeds. So what is that telling us? It's using more of the port more efficiently, right? All right, let's take a quick look at our pinch air speeds. 278, 281, 280, 268. That took us a big step back. 299, 281. And somebody asked a good question, and where am I getting my air speeds? Well, I usually do my air speeds according to whatever application we're running. Now this, I think DV is going to try to run about 600 thousandths lift in this if he can get it. So I'm doing all my airspeed testing at 600. Now, if 600 is more than we use, and I get a good curve up to 600, it's not that big a loss. I had another point to talk about, but I can't remember what it was. Okay. Center of cylinder roof was 250. It took a step back to 220. 221. What is that telling you? 227 to 223. Very similar. They barely move, but they're both down a little bit. I think I'm going to try to start adding pluses and minuses to these as well, just to make it a little easier to follow. Okay, we went from 384 to 368, 354 to 360, 325 to 330, right? Minus, plus, plus. So where do we go from here at this point? Well, I really like what I see as far as flow, as far as Dicom in the chamber. I think that's pretty good. The middle of this curve is not terrible. Do I want to get more peak? Yes. And I should mention, the reason I can't get more than 450 lift out of this thing is I cannot find any of my Chrysler retainers or locks. So I kind of have it jammed with a GM retainer and lock. So that's why it's a mess. You know, poor testing, but if you don't have the stuff, what are you going to do? Do the best you can with what you got. All right, I think I'm going to take a quick look at my air speeds for my exhaust, and I might make a little adjustment to the bowl of the exhaust, depending upon our thicknesses. I'm pretty sure they're quite thick still. With our intake, I'm thinking about our short side radius because it really hasn't had much work yet. But I don't want to lose the gains we've got in the middle, right? Now, you know what? We need a question for the comments. Who thinks this curve will make more power than this curve? Strictly on airflow. You let me know in the comments, guys. I almost forgot to show you our bowl with our dicum. Our dicum is quite a ways down. May not be easy for you guys to see, but we've got dicum all the way down to here. All the way down to here. All the way up this wall. This whole area is all covered with a little bit of dicum. You can see the little drop of oil on the top of the roof. That was from measuring the 041 head with the same caliper. And the rest of it is, you can see just a touch of blue here going around our radius. And the rest of it is clean. So that tells us a little bit of what's going on. I actually, so far, that's my favorite dicum pattern that we've gotten. It's actually not much on the chamber. It's got a lot in the port itself, and there's a lot. It's very wide on the bore adapter. All right, guys, I can't remember what else I wanted to talk to you guys about, but I would like to get a little more work done on these tonight. This is actually Thursday night, but this will not be posted probably till the weekend. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out. I appreciate you hanging out with me. God knows I need some friends. Talk to you later.